My own family turned on me. The moment I said, no more money. I still remember the exact moment my brother Brian stood outside my apartment door, pounding on it so hard my neighbors peeked through their peepholes. He was shouting that I was the world's worst sister, that I had betrayed our family, all because I refused to hand him another stack of cash. I'd always known deep down that our ties were fragile, but it had never felt so real, so raw, until that night. His face was flushed red, veins popping in his neck, and the only thing he kept yelling was, "If you can't help your own brother, then you're nothing to me." That single sentence stabbed me right in the chest because, for years, he and everyone else in our family had made me feel like I was their only hope. And in a twisted sense, I had believed it myself. I guess I should start by saying I wasn't born into a particularly wealthy household. We were average folks living in a small town. My dad, Thomas, worked long hours in a local hardware store, and my mom, Linda, took cleaning gigs wherever she could find them. My older brother, Brian, used to talk big about being a famous musician, but ended up drifting in and out of odd jobs. My younger sister, Ashley, she was always the baby, the one everyone coddled, who never had to face real consequences because my parents and Brian protected her from anything mildly uncomfortable. As for me, I was the quiet one, the kid who studied in the corner, while the rest of them argued about money. We'd gather around our rickety kitchen table every night, those old chairs wobbling under us. Mom would say, "One day, once you're successful, promise you won't forget your roots." She was looking at me, even though I was only 10. I'd nod obediently, not fully grasping that her words would loom over me for decades. Dad would just sigh and say, "She's our little genius," as if I were destined to save them all. Maybe they saw some spark, my early knack for math, or how I'd hide in the library reading about computers. I never gave it much thought. I just wanted to learn, to do something meaningful with my life. But to them, it was like I was a future lottery ticket. High school breezed by in a blur of advanced classes and extracurriculars. I joined just so I could list them on scholarship applications. I wanted out of that suffocating environment a chance to carve my own path. And I did. I got a partial scholarship to a decent university. Mom and Dad beamed with pride, told all our relatives how I was going to become the first real success in the family. They never exactly said it, but the undertone was always, "Remember who raised you because you owe us." I was too naive to see the red flags in that phrase. College was liberating. I studied software engineering, worked part-time at a student lab, and hustled however I could to pay for my share of expenses. Brian drifted in and out of community college, eventually dropping out to focus on his band, which never materialized into anything but endless jam sessions in Dad's garage. Ashley was finishing up high school, still treated like a princess at home. Meanwhile, I was balancing 15-hour days, but I loved what I did. I had no illusions about striking it rich right away, but I knew I wanted a stable life, and I wanted to help my parents if they ever truly needed it. Then came graduation. I landed an entry-level job at a tech startup in the city, with a modest salary that was still more than anyone in my family had earned. I remember Brian throwing an arm around my shoulders at my graduation party, whispering in my ear, "Don't forget your big bro when you're making those six figures, okay?" He gave me a wink, like we shared some inside joke. Ashley asked if I could pay for her dream trip to Los Angeles before she started college. Mom cornered me in the kitchen and mentioned Dad's medical bills were piling up. Did I think I could pitch in a bit? Over the course of a single evening, I felt more like a walking ATM than a daughter or sister. But I obliged, because they were my family. I loved them. I thought I was doing the right thing. It wasn't too bad in the beginning. Just occasional requests. Brian needed a couple $100 for rent if his gig money didn't come through. Ashley wanted help with textbooks. Dad asked me to cover a car payment he'd missed because the hardware store cut his hours. Mom needed new appliances because, she said, the old ones were making her miserable. It was trickling out of my bank account, but I was making enough to stay afloat. Whenever I hesitated, I'd feel a twinge of guilt. They had sacrificed so much for me, right? If I said no, wouldn't that be turning my back on the people who gave me life? The real trouble started about a year into my new job. My salary got a small bump after a promotion. I was excited. I remember calling Dad, telling him, "Hey, I'm doing pretty well. I might move to a better apartment soon." Before I could finish, he cut me off. "Thank God you're moving up. We need help paying off some credit card debt," I stammered. "Wait, whose credit card debt?" That's when I learned Mom and Dad had racked up a few thousand in charges, mostly for things they didn't even bother to mention before. "But we knew you'd come through," Dad said, like it was obvious. He didn't ask if I minded. He basically told me it was my duty. I felt the slightest jolt of indignation, but I stifled it. "Sure," I said. "Send me the details." From there, it snowballed. Brian began calling me in the middle of the night, going on about how he almost got signed with his band and just needed an advance to fix his busted guitar equipment. Ashley had enrolled in some private college courses that cost far more than she had planned. Then she switched majors twice, incurring extra fees, and she asked me to cover all of it. My parents were behind on their mortgage for the second time in 6 months. Every phone call I got from them was a crisis, some emergency that would ruin everything unless I stepped in with a rescue. Like a fool, I kept paying. I thought, at least they appreciate it, but after a while, they stopped saying thank you. They acted like this was normal, that I was the family's safety net. The guilt trip escalated whenever I even hinted at wanting to dial back. Mom would say, "I gave up my youth for you. You can't even help your own mother?" Dad would join in. "If I hadn't put food on the table all those years, you wouldn't be where you are." My heart would pound with shame each time, so I'd open my wallet again. Brian and Ashley were no better, firing off text messages demanding funds for their projects, then ghosting me until the next meltdown. I hit my breaking point the night Brian used my name to lease expensive studio equipment. It was something I never authorized. Yet the bills came to me because, apparently, he'd forged my signature on the documents. I confronted him at our parents' house. We were in the living room, the TV flickering in the background, and I said, "Brian, you can't do stuff like that. It's fraud." He laughed like I was being ridiculous. "Fraud? Seriously? We're family. It's not fraud if it's within the same bloodline." I stood there, speechless, while Mom pretended to be busy in the kitchen. Dad muttered something about how I should just handle it, like a good daughter. In that moment, a surge of anger burst inside me. My own brother had basically stolen from me. When I tried to bring up boundaries, my dad scolded me. "This is your brother. If you care, you'll keep him out of trouble." That night, I wrote a check, my hands shaking the entire time, to pay off the equipment debt so that my credit wouldn't be trashed. When I left my parents' house, I sat in my car and cried for half an hour. Engine off, tears blurring the streetlights. I realized I was tethered to them by guilt and a sense of obligation that was slowly crushing me, and none of them, not one, even expressed remorse. The next day, I attempted a civilized approach. I gathered everyone, Brian, Ashley, Mom, and Dad, at the dining table. I calmly explained that I needed to set limits, that maybe we could come up with a budget. "I can help you learn financial planning," I said. "I don't want to see you all suffer, but I can't keep covering every whim or misstep." You'd think I'd spat in their faces. Brian rolled his eyes. Ashley said, "Wow, you're so high and mighty now." And Dad huffed, "Don't lecture us. We know how to live." Mom just glared, as if I'd betrayed her personally. The conversation escalated to yelling in under 2 minutes. "You wouldn't be so successful if we hadn't sacrificed for you," Mom screamed. "You think you got there all on your own?" I was trembling, but a part of me stayed firm. "You asked for help," I said, "and I gave it. But this is out of control." It was out of control. They wanted money for everything. New furniture, vacations, electronics. Sometimes they'd pretend it was a dire necessity. Like Ashley once telling me her car broke down and she couldn't get to class. I wired her $500. 2 days later, I saw pictures of her partying in Las Vegas, nowhere near a mechanic's shop. I confronted her, but she just shrugged and blocked me for a week. One evening, Dad left me a voicemail yelling that he was ashamed of me for not giving him an extra $2,000. He demanded to fix the house roof. He said, "You owe me, young lady," like I was a delinquent. And that's when it finally clicked. They didn't love me. They loved what I did for them. The sense of betrayal gnawed at me. The next day, in a moment of clarity, I said to myself, "No more money." I must have repeated it 10 times out loud, pacing around my living room. No more money, no more money, no more money. I felt a knot in my stomach, wondering if I was about to alienate my entire family, but there was no alternative. The official explosion happened the weekend after that. Ashley texted me at 2 in the morning, wanting more cash for some emergency. I ignored her. By 9 a.m., my phone had over 20 missed calls from Dad, from Brian, from Mom. Finally, in the afternoon, they all showed up at my apartment, pounding on my door. Brian was out front, shouting, "Open up, or I'll tell everyone what kind of person you really are." I let them in, bracing myself for the confrontation. They crowded my tiny living room, and Dad wasted no time. "Where's the money Ashley asked for?" he demanded, as if it were his right. I faced them, heart pounding. "I'm done," I said. "I'm not giving you money anymore." There was a stunned pause. Mom's eyes widened in disbelief. Brian's lips curled into a sneer. Ashley's mouth dropped open. Dad's face turned bright red. "Excuse me," he barked. I repeated it, clearer this time. "I will not give you any more money." The fury unleashed was unlike anything I'd ever witnessed. Mom screamed that I was ungrateful, a selfish brat. Dad's voice rose to a roar, calling me a disgrace. Ashley accused me of never caring about her future. Brian stepped closer, swearing I'd regret it if I turned my back on my own blood. Their words blurred into a cacophony of threats and insults. In that chaos, something inside me broke free. My shoulders stopped shaking. I breathed steadily. A weird calm took over. As they hurled their anger, I felt relief, because for once, I was standing up for myself. I said, "I love you, but I can't keep sacrificing my life and my peace for you." Mom slapped the coffee table so hard, my mug toppled. "Get out of my sight, all of you," I told them. "If this is how you treat me." They stormed out with Dad shouting, "You'll regret this day!" In the following weeks, the backlash was relentless. I'd wake up to dozens of angry texts from them, calling me every name imaginable. Dad threatened to disown me formally. Mom wrote on social media that she'd raised a cold-hearted traitor who abandoned her parents. Friends and neighbors asked me what was going on because my family was spreading rumor after rumor about me, saying I was a greedy tyrant who refused to help her own flesh and blood. Ashley claimed I was mentally unstable. Brian told people I'd stolen money from him, and Dad said I was punishing him for no reason. At first, I was devastated, physically ill over the betrayal, but day by day, I grew less afraid of their lies. For once, my bank account was stable. I could pay my own bills without fear that I'd be blindsided by someone else's meltdown. I began to treat myself in small ways, like signing up for a gym membership, buying groceries without penny pinching, or taking an occasional rideshare instead of the bus. My performance at work skyrocketed because I wasn't constantly anxious about a new family crisis. My boss congratulated me on staying so focused, ironically unaware of the personal meltdown I'd just endured, but a sense of isolation hounded me. Birthdays went by with no messages from them except hateful voicemails. The quiet was jarring. I tried reaching out to extended family members, like my Aunt Karen in Ohio, hoping for a lifeline of normalcy. She was sympathetic, but repeated that I should forgive and forget, maybe keep helping them a little, if only to keep the family from falling apart. That concept made my stomach churn. I realized how deeply embedded this entitlement was in our entire family tree. It seemed everyone believed I existed to bear financial responsibility for the rest of them, all because I'd found a decent career path. Aunt Karen meant well, but her advice felt like a chain around my neck. I had to break free or I'd never live my own life. One of the worst moments came a couple of months later. Ashley called in tears, saying Dad had been hospitalized. She claimed he might not make it if he didn't get a certain procedure done. The hospital bills were huge, she said, and she begged me to cover them. My heart pounded. Despite all the hurt, I still loved Dad on some level. I asked for details, demanded she let me speak to a doctor. She got flustered and hung up. Later, I learned from a friend who worked near Dad's town that he was perfectly fine. He hadn't set foot in any hospital. It was all a scheme to tug at my guilt. For a while, I just sat on my bed, staring at the wall, sick to my stomach. They would lie about something that's severe just to squeeze money out of me. After that, something inside me shifted permanently. I saw them not as flawed family members who occasionally messed up, but as people who would manipulate and exploit me without hesitation. It hurt more than anything, but it also set me free. My phone stopped lighting up with their calls because I blocked them. They responded by telling everyone I was a monster, but I stood my ground. I sought therapy to unpack the years of emotional blackmail and to remind myself I wasn't a villain for wanting personal boundaries. As time passed, I found a strange sense of peace. Yes, it was lonely, especially around the holidays. I would scroll through social media and see pictures of them all smiling together, labeling themselves the best family in the world. Part of me longed to be there, despite everything. But then, I'd remember the viciousness in their eyes the day I said, "No more money." I'd recall how easily they turned on me, how quickly love can dissolve when people only see you as a paycheck. Small pockets of support emerged in unexpected places. A former neighbor who knew my situation sent me a kind message, saying she'd witnessed my parents' behavior growing up and always felt sorry for me. A colleague at work confided that she, too, had been pressured to fund her siblings after she found success. We bonded over the painful realization that sometimes you have to let go of the toxic side of family to save your sanity. These bits of empathy were like anchors I held onto when the shame and sadness threatened to overwhelm me. Every now and then, I'd have dreams about simpler times, when Dad used to take me fishing at the creek by our house, or when Mom sang old country songs while frying eggs, or when Brian and I would chase each other in the backyard. Those childhood memories sparkled with a warmth I couldn't ignore. The next morning, I'd wake up remembering that real life was no fairy tale. My family had made their choice. They replaced love with manipulation, genuine care with demands for money, and I refused to become their financial doormat again. I used to think cutting them off was the cruelest thing I could do, but I learned that sometimes setting firm boundaries is the only way to protect yourself, especially if the other party refuses to respect you in any other way. In the quiet of my own space, I finally learned to breathe, to have weekends where I wasn't dreading the next phone call, the next guilt trip. I started saving up for a trip to New York City, a place I'd always wanted to visit, but never had the extra cash for. It felt surreal, indulging in a dream that was purely mine, not overshadowed by someone else's demands. Life moved on, day by day. My routine became stable: work, gym, cooking healthy meals instead of living off microwave dinners. I learned that self-care isn't selfish, it's necessary. And though the heartbreak never fully fades, I've realized you can love your family without letting them destroy you. Sometimes love means saying, I won't let you take advantage of me anymore. It's been over a year since I cut them off financially. My mother has tried a few times to contact me via distant relatives, feeding them sob stories, but I hold firm. Brian apparently turned to some questionable get-rich-quick schemes. Ashley moved on to her third major and complains on social media that she can't afford her bills because her sister abandoned her. Dad keeps telling folks around town I'm cold-hearted and ungrateful. Part of me still grieves for the family I wanted them to be, but that family never really existed. They were illusions built on the condition that I kept paying up. Today, I stand in my small but cozy apartment, surrounded by little comforts I never allowed myself before. A new coffee maker, some plants on the windowsill, even a stack of books I've been wanting to read. My heart feels lighter. Sometimes, a pang of regret surfaces. I wonder if there was a way to fix things without cutting them off. But every time I revisit that thought, I remember how they orchestrated fake emergencies and manipulated me at every turn. They left me no choice. I share this story because I know I'm not alone. There are people out there living under similar burdens, believing they must pay for the love and approval of their own families. It's a lonely road, stepping away from that dynamic. But it might be the only path to genuine freedom. You can't buy real love. That's a hard truth I learned too late. Yet I'm grateful I learned it at all, because now I'm free to live on my own terms. And that's how it all went down. My own family turned on me the moment I said, no more money. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still see Brian's furious expression, hear Dad's voice calling me names, feel the sting of Mom's betrayal. But at least I can breathe without a shiver of dread that another urgent request is about to drain my wallet and my soul. Love shouldn't be conditional on how much you're willing to sacrifice. In my case, it took losing my family to understand that. And maybe, just maybe, that understanding is worth the cost.